Excellent. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, good evening. Happy Sunday evening. I'm also on YouTube. I'm on Patreon. If you're here for a second, I guess the thing I want to let you know about is that I think I will be able to get the mortgage paid tomorrow. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure the way that Patreon usually works on the first day of the month, I should be able to pull out enough tomorrow morning to finish being able to cover the mortgage. So very, very stoked about that, and happy and thankful for everybody here who's been helping that dream along. I have a Patreon, like I said. It's patreon.com/thirdperson. If you go over there, or if you simply just follow me on YouTube, you can see this is a live that I'm doing there right now. And unfortunately, I'm dropping some frames. Hey, Trucker G, nice to see you over in the YouTube. Let me know if you're having trouble seeing or hearing me. It looks like my stream just got nice and quick again in the first minute that it's up there. And of course, TikTok works how TikTok works. Hello, friends. Good evening. We're going to keep going through Euphoria and talk about some stuff. So, verse 2 of Euphoria, I guess kind of picking up right where we left off, but this is going to be a distinct podcast episode. I've named it as such. So as people sort of like filter into the stream, I'm going to start talking about Kendrick Lamar lyrics. That's the point of this podcast. It's Bible study. I'm third person. I'm a rapper in my own right. I also make my own beats. I've been working on building a TikTok for the last 3.5 years. The personal part of my story, thank you very much. I got this cardigan on one of those really cheap internet websites, and I'm sure that it's probably putting tiny microplastics into my body somehow. In 2023, I was working in tech. I had gotten started in tech, and I've worked before as like a code bootcamp teacher. And I was working as a coder, and I lost my job in 2023, and then I got another job, and I lost my job again in 2023. And because I have a lot of music and stuff on Bandcamp, and because I had been building up a Patreon for side income, and because I had already like gotten a TikTok platform up to a certain size, I was like, okay, maybe I could just do this full time. And that's what I've been trying to do since is me kind of betting on myself that even though it's very, very hard for me to regularly show up and make weekly episodes, let alone one and a bonus to entice people to like a $3 tier, I can still do that. I can still work on doing it on a weekly basis, and if I fall off of it, I can get back up and keep getting back on the routine, which to me is one of the hardest things to do. So yeah, we hopped back on the horse, and we started talking about Euphoria tonight, because this is a podcast where we engage in themes including like religious or spiritual belief. It's obviously about reading rap lyrics. This is about music appreciation. This is about staying in touch with our own like creative desires as artists in our own right. This is about Kendrick's quote, "It's a must we outside," and remembering to like stay balanced as we enjoy these hobbies and what I consider in my own life to be full-blown autistic self-interest of like seeing where these lyrics might share motifs or linkages conceptually that might include the idea in like a juicy sort of what if kind of way that maybe these rappers are working together. But like, hey, if you have schizophrenia, maybe that's not a safe thing for you to be thinking about, right? The idea that like there's a secret conspiracy under the hood that involves real people who might have secret messages in music that you can detect, but maybe other people couldn't detect. That's not a safe platform of thought for a lot of folks. If you're bipolar, you deal with mania, that's not necessarily a safe platform of thought. I have too much chores to do. Like, I'm always behind on laundry. I'm always behind on dishes. There's always something to snap me out of it. I gotta feed a kid. I gotta feed, my dogs. My partner and I, we split meal stuff. I don't feed my partner, but she feeds me some days. And then some days we agree on dinner stuff. And then I help with like 1 or 2 of the food items with dinner. But yeah, and she feeds my kid most of the time, But like, in terms of the day that I spend, I have so many things to do in my life, outside of just thinking about rap lyrics, that it's not that hard for me to take breaks as I need to. They just are built into my day. If you're chilling by yourself, Kendrick's whole catalog, that's so cool. I love that for you. Make sure you're taking breaks to get sleep. Make sure that you're taking breaks to eat food. Make sure that it's not the only hobby that you're involved with. Yeah, don't forget to start that dryer, Like, don't forget about the little chores and errands that, like, pile up in your life, and try not to run into those days where it's like, oh, I was doing the thing that was so fun for so long, and now I'm stuck. I have all these things piled up. I feel resentment at things that I could have taken care of yesterday or the day before, but I didn't take the breaks I needed to. Let's try to avoid those outcomes. That's not outside behavior, in my opinion, and I might be reading too deep into Kendrick's lyrics right there. But I think when he says it's a must we outside, it's like, let's be out of that inner spiral mode, the inside rumination. To the extent that we enjoy this music, let's try to enjoy it with other people. If we're having fun thoughts about music, let's have the fun thoughts out loud with other people, because then they can be our kind of like sounding boards too. And sometimes that's a contagion effect, right? We want to avoid the idea that people are maybe like spinning in a shared delusion. What I'm talking about is speaking to things that you think are maybe like weird and just going, I know this sounds weird, but, and then you say it, and then somebody else goes, yeah, that does sound weird. And then the little part of your brain that's like, could that be true? You're like, no, I just heard somebody else say that does sound weird. I can keep that in the fan fiction zone. Just keep stuff in the fan fiction zone. That's my recommendation. That's what I do. Sometimes when I speak in this podcast, I fully step into my preacher character, and we put away the notion of a fan fiction zone during the minutes of the podcast. And so I just want to do this disclaimer before we dive in every time, because I really want this to be as intellectually and psychologically safe of an experience as possible. I'm truly just somebody who's doing this because I wanted to have something I could talk about for 50 to 60 hours without having to stop, so I could get a podcast launched and then figure out what the next podcast is about, that I first podcast. And that's what this means to me, like on a very fundamental level. And I love the rap lyrics, and I love that I found something that I love that I can talk about so freely. But I don't want this to become, please don't let this become your personality as a person. Let this be at most like a hobby that you enjoy and a delight in your life and a reason to spend more time listening to music that you love. And if you're at the brink of making it something else, please do take a break. It's not worth it. I keep telling people these songs are here. There's no rush. There's no race. You don't have to keep pouring hours of yourself into it at the expense of other stuff. That always looks like an addiction, whether you're, watching too many UFC fights or whether you're walking too many miles, and it's like, hey, why aren't you at work? Oh, I had to walk. I had to get my steps in. There's a lot of ways that people can do things that are nominally healthy or pro-social things to excess, and even music appreciation can become one of those things. So I like to say that at the beginning before we dive in, because I think it's a good warm-up. I really appreciate the gifts and people hanging with me on TikTok Live. Just want to remind people that are just kind of coming through the digital door that I'm over on Patreon as well, patreon.com/thirdperson. This is a free podcast episode, playing a little bit of catch-up because that pop-out show, oh man, that just reverberated in my soul. I spent so long thinking about what was going to happen at the show in advance of like, which artists could be involved. Because, fan fiction, what if the fan fiction is real? Which artists might be there that I wouldn't expect to see? And I didn't have Tyler, the Creator, on my list, like up top, anywhere near, right? I was thinking like Eminem. I was like, maybe because he did Love Game with Eminem, and maybe because the Benjamin and Jackson in his house, like he's Joe, refers to the same story of a drowned rat, or a drowned creature. I'm not going to get too specific in lyrics as I go because I'm remembering I'm also on TikTok Live, and there's a whole other meta layer of like, I have to be euphemistic as I talk so that the auto mod bots don't confuse me for endorsing things that are talked about in rap lyrics. But yeah, I was thinking that Eminem might be involved. Friends might be a secret mystery of like, which friends, who's Ken friends with? That's also got this animosity against Drake or the industry. Is Eminem going to pop out? Is SZA going to pop out? And by the way, SZA did show up in the crowd in costume, which was kind of cool. But no, the only Eminem appearance was the song Stan. And the actual unity that surprised everybody had nothing to do with my own pet theories about other artists that could be involved in this. It was about the artists in the West that showed more solidarity and unity with each other in spite of like animosity from different sets and neighborhoods, right? That was such a cool moment. It was truly, I think, like a Juneteenth miracle, and I loved the sight of it. And I said immediately that I felt moved, even though I don't know enough about the details of the sets. Like I couldn't recognize who's a danger to who based on which baseball cap. But I know, in my city, there's stuff that goes around, and you understand that like it's generally not about you. And since it's not about you, since you didn't see shit and hear stuff, like just let it be and try to keep separate and do what you can to like provide alternate ways for people to spend time after school, Go volunteer, donate at a place that's like a third place after school that's not home so that kids have a resource. But obviously a lot of times people take the resources. So gangs are a part of life. That's what we've got. I was thinking about, hey, which celebrities might show fealty in like a rhetorical way? And I think what Kendrick did was so much deeper, because if we can get over our fights and our violence on these community levels and come together, even just in the spirit of let's make some music for a minute, that means too. And that brings tears to my eyes because it's like I get so worked up about it because we're obviously in a time right now where it is so crucial that we need to come together and we need to find ways to solve these like big existential shaped problems. And I don't know. I think that like a concert like that just really reverberates because you don't expect to see that many people with that much bad blood kind of generationally or historically, among people that they knew that were lost to the hands of people that other people on that same stage might have known in the past. That's like a really poetic thing. That's like a Shakespeare story that gets better instead of like scarier and more tragic over time. That's like potentially like at the heart of this beef between two people is still a beating heart of love of the soil that you're from. So as this culmination of like, how much pettiness does he have for Drake? Ooh, I wonder what Drake's thinking. Drake. Ooh, let's talk. Oh, I hear you like him young, Drake. And then sometimes that kind of talk even becomes bad for victims, right? Or people who would be in danger because it's like we have so much fun laughing that we forget we're laughing about real people. But then when it's time for us to step up at the house party, right? At the function, like you're out somewhere at a bar, you're at a club, wherever, and like you actually do have a chance to make sure to say like, hey, are you okay, sis? And like keep a space safe, or to say, hey man, that's not appropriate, and like just check a dude. Like there is a culture of violence against women that has nothing to do with like rumors or allegations that are tossed around in a rap beef. And I think when Kendrick says it's a must we outside, it's about that too. Anyways, I'm getting real digressive because I don't know. I'm in a happy space at the end of the month. I'm happy y'all are here, and I'm hopeful that like because we're aware of things in the real world, that we can also stay aware of stuff like unrwa.org, translifeline.org. There's somebody on Blue Sky right now who goes by Coffin MILF who's like got one more day before she's got to bail and not get her kid any more birthday presents than the one that she could afford. She's in a rough spot, similar to where my partner would be if I wasn't here doing this for my family. So it makes me like real upset when I think about it. And so we're gonna do a good podcast episode, and I have links in my bio. And if people are like buying my Bandcamp albums and stuff, there's gonna be portions of my proceeds after I've paid my mortgage tomorrow that are gonna go toward groceries because the pantry's kind of empty. But then like also as that's happening, I'm gonna make sure this kid gets like some birthday present money in the bank too. That's why I'm playing so late. I could, I'll do an extra episode because it's somebody else's clock and not just my own. I actually end up doing my best job to be my best self when I'm thinking of somebody else's timeline. When it's my own timeline, I make all sorts of excuses to procrastinate, and then I end up feeling like regretful and self-blamey. But if I can think about like, oh yeah, somebody else's kid is either going to get a cool present or like 2 or 3 cool presents, and I can help make it be 2 or 3, then I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I'll stay up. Let me get on the pod. Make sure the mic works. Check the chat from time to time. That's important. I love the 50 Cent joke. That's deep. All right, cool. So we've gone through the disclaimer. We've checked in on our mental health and our readiness to like explore this fan fiction-y space. And the broad strokes story that we're talking through in my own head canon here, combined with like talk that I've heard other people kind of offer on the internet, is that there's a career-long man in the mirror story that Kendrick is telling to be a Gemini in full, right? Everything gets copped 2 times. And so throughout his whole career, I think we have these moments where almost on a verse by verse basis, we unpack second layers of meaning that show that he truly is living the double life that he alluded to all the way back in that Buried Alive interlude. And of course, there's reference to Buried Alive. People have been pointing out that like, what's it called? The Real Dirt. There's a YouTube guy. I'm sorry, I don't want to like try to be like a big league. I'm still just learning who the people are on YouTube. But it's something with dirt in the name, and he did a really good 616 in LA breakdown. Like he takes like 12 minutes just to go through the title. And I recommend that to everybody. The 616 in LA breakdown that's up on YouTube, it's like an hour long. It's a guy with a beard. It's not Mr. Dirt. I don't want to call him Mr. Dirt. I'm not. Listen, if I was a dad and I wasn't trying to do this and I was trying to annoy my kid, I would definitely call her favorite YouTuber Mr. Dirt to like be fake wrong as like a dad joke. Thank you. It's What's the Dirt. I appreciate you. What's the Dirt? It's the What's the Dirt 616 in LA breakdown. But he mentions in the title that the date of Buried Alive Interlude Part 1 happens to be the day before Kendrick's birthday. And he leaves it on the cliffhanger of like Kendrick going, and I died. And he's like, well, what does that mean? And he goes to a Kendrick quote where like he opens things up allegorically and says, well, you don't know which way I'm going to go. But one thing that he says on 616 in LA, like where he's saying like, God, my confession is yours, right? It's another way to say it is finished. It's like saying like stop at the end of a telegram. So on 616 in LA, he's preparing for another 616 in LA death. The first one having been on the Buried Alive Interlude Part 1, because Kendrick's birthday is the 17th, is it not? If you die on 616, doesn't that just mean you're born again the next day into a second life? So when like at the end of the song, he's talking about how like he's planning for what Drake is going to recognize and how it's going to be a threat on Drake. And I don't know. I think What's the Dirt is like, he's got a cool theory about like this line is about Drake or it's about Kendrick. The thing I'm trying to help people understand is that Kendrick is a Gemini. I think the genius of Kendrick Lamar is that both meaning intentional. If you're reading a Kendrick Lamar line and you're going, I think that there's a strong indication that he's speaking from Drake's point of view in this line, it doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't speaking in Drake's point of view also before you had that thought. You know what I mean? Like he can write on two levels if he wants to. What's a good example of that? Like how he calls Drake a master manipulator twice at the start of Euphoria, but one time he calls him a pathetic master manipulator. And my theory is that one of the master manipulators is not pathetic coming from the same root word pathos, meaning like feeling. And he's indicted Drake for being unfeeling or frozen hearted throughout this beef. And so I think also, by the way, if you go back to like BDKMV off of Good Kid Mad City, if there's shade in that song, the shape of the shade is that we live in this world on two different axles. The way that you live in this world, I don't understand. I can't imagine, I can't really fathom the way that you feel right now. So he's indicted Drake as being like this unfeeling manipulator, and I think that he's saying, I'm also a manipulator too in the start of Euphoria, but I'm the pathetic one. I'm the one that if you actually have a heart that's ready to break with me, you're gonna have your heart beating with mine, and with empathy, you'll see that there's blood in my pen. I'm so proud of myself, by the way, total non sequitur. But I simplified the things that are attached to my little beat making machine here. I just put a simple gear on this that's designed to do that kind of like satisfying rocking spin, right? Hey, Morpheus, nice to see you. And then, hey, what's up, Dom? Nice to see you. And I've got a wheel over here that spins. And then I've got this down here, which is like just a really nice idle fidget that just kind of turns. And none of this stuff is actually on the table because I've got a Lego Technic piece here, and it's basically up on a little stand. Isn't that cute? And then the cutest part is I've got this little music note over here in the corner. What? So I was proud because the last setup that I had for this is just a lot more involved. I had all these like bigger Lego things, and it was beautiful, but it was also very... would a depressed person make this, and less about the tactile feel of messing with the thing itself. So trying to get on my post Adam Scott upswing mode. Anyways, the longest possible preambles on these podcasts, right? It's like a very social get together. Thank you very much, Dom Doesn't Exist. I appreciate you. And yo, Burns, thank you too. Yeah, breathing in the superpowers get neutralized. Breathing out, I can only watch in silence. Nice. Yeah, I get the sense that Kendrick is definitely in touch with his breath a lot. Like I feel like he seems like a guy that gets up in the morning, does some meditation, starts writing almost immediately after waking. And I think he's written about that as being part of his routine before and part of like the secret of his greatness. Just getting after it every morning. I'm about to try to do a similar thing for the month of July on a daily basis just to see how it feels. Because I really am trying to honor, like, I'm trying to be a disciple of Kendrick Lamar in a weird, like, wilderness preacher sort of way, but also in a way that is earnest and coming from a place of kindness. Like, you know Steve Zahn's character in season 3 of Righteous Gemstones, except if you took away, like, the guns and, like, the weird misogyny and like the insecure inability to like listen to your own family when they're like, hey, you're pushing it, take a break. If you just have like the sort of like kooky, just kind of out there in the woods, but you can tell that the person's very concerned about like getting it right and speaking to the real love and not necessarily like the establishment version of the story. I like those elements of the wilderness preacher. I do think that they can turn into cult leaders very quickly and dangerous ones equally so. And so that's why we do the disclaimers, and that's why I try to couch this in the spirit of art and layered art and themes on the way in so that you can know that I'm not just like spinning off into a world because I lost control of some stuff. This is a fun world to dig into because in the lyrics he says the rabbit hole gets deep. And in the lyrics he says, read slow and you'll find gold mines in these lines. So let's resume reading verse 2 of Euphoria here. Previously it just said headshot for the year, you better walk around like Daft Punk, and I had said that means that Drake's not going to be just walking around as one person. He'll have to have a body double with him. Because Daft Punk is a single name for two men. I think that's a really fun thing for the line too, because Kendrick likes to use his like mirror motif so much. So to talk about Daft Punk, which is like a kind of vaguely singular sounding name, but anybody who knows Daft Punk knows that one man walking around like Daft Punk means one man figuring out a way to walk around as two men. And while you puzzle over that, maybe you can empathize with how Kendrick decided to live his whole career. That's my headcanon. Remember? First of all, remember a big question right at the top. The delivery of the line is a reference to worst behavior, right? Remember? They used to never want to hear us. Remember? Right? So he's like kind of mocking there, right? But I think the mockery is not just saying like, I can do your lines back at you. I think he's saying, hey, Drake, you write in your lines, remember, and yet you refuse to. You're not actually living in your real memories. You've told people these fairy tales. I can smell the tales on you now. Remember is a challenging question to a guy that might be lying. He might be saying, hey, are you lying even to yourself? Do you even remember? And he might be saying, because of that, I've got information on you, and I've got people who are very angry at you because of the stuff that you pointedly refuse to remember. Word gets around, man. Rumors spread. Hey, top dog, who the hell they think they're playing with? He didn't say hell. Extortion my middle name as soon as you jump off that plane, B. And this is, of course, a reference back to push-ups because Drake had been mad at Kendrick about, like, hey, man, where's my money? Like, I can't get my cut because you're giving half to Top. I'm trying to be in my little multi-level marketing thing with you. That's what I really think he's saying to Kendrick, by the way. I know that he's got a deal with Top. I know that he gives 50% to the guy that, like, was like a mentor and a partner for him growing up somewhat. But also I think that, like, if there's some sort of a deal where Kendrick is supposed to swear fealty to Drake or secretly give some of his money to Drake, then that drop and give him 50, Drake could actually be referring to himself in the third person as Top, as like Kendrick's allegorical Top in push-ups. Anyways, he's being sure that he knows which Top he's talking about because he says top dog, who they think they playing with. Extortion my middle name as soon as you jump off of that plane. Now, here's the cool thing. The they there, he's not just talking about Drake, right? Who they think they're playing with is plural, and that just kind of like opens up the question that he continues to open up in like Meet the Grams with like, I've been in this business and they do these things. They've got people in their phones that are getting kind of brought out to these weird parties that might not just be parties allegedly. So then, of course, extortion my middle name, like he's just saying like, if you want to move safely in my city, if you want to come near me, then you're going to have to deal with the things that I remember about you and that you're going to have to remember about how well I'm known in the streets. I'm allergic to the lame. Only you like being famous. So once again, here's like the, I think lame had come up a couple times. We talked about that in the last episode, but like, I think that this could also be a reference back once again to King Kunta cutting legs off me. Cutting legs off me could also be a reference to like disable somebody rather than take them out. If that was something like that's like a dark true crime way to put it, right? If you wanted to go that route with it, or you could decide, let me go a little more allegorical with it. Let me talk about cutting somebody's legs off in terms of like maybe the things that prop up a song in order to make it a hit, or we're not going to have the legs that the studio normally gives a song. The things that are maybe it refers to the false like streams, right? That the song doesn't have legs of its own, but the streams have been manufactured or doctored in some way. And once again, this would be a very ableist way to get at something like that. I'm not really trying to like forgive the use of lame shit. I'm just trying to figure out why it might be used in the mind of an artist that's trying to tell on Drake in ways that maybe Drake would be designed to pick up before a fan. Only You Like Being Famous is not designed for Drake to pick up before a fan, right? That was definitely a fan call. What's really funny and ironic about the Only You Like Being Famous line is it's about as close as Kendrick gets before Not Like Us to actually passing on the body and turning to talk to the crowd. Like, people remarked through the whole beef that like Drake had the tone of going, is this guy for real? And Kendrick had the tone of, when I go to heaven, when I die, I will go to heaven because I told the truth on this day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Kendrick was like staring down this man, and Drake was like kind of turning around to go, hey y'all, I don't know who this person is. He's like pandering to the crowd. Sometimes he'd like tell a punchline directly to the crowd, it would feel like. And Kendrick got there too by the end of it. But at this stage, he's not there. He's written the words maybe, but he's not there. So when he says Only You Like Being Famous, with that tone change, it is a nice ooh moment for the fans. And I feel like it's one of those lines that like you definitely, you know that when you're talking to the person, it's primarily intended for other people to think about and to reconsider, like, hey, the thing that I value about Drake, is that the thing that people who are in Drake's circles and on Drake's level valuing? Or is Drake alone in liking being famous? Or is every other celebrity maybe craving different stuff than fame? That would be an interesting kind of frame flip. I just think it's a very interesting, like, I say interesting a lot. I'll be more precise. I think it's like an illuminating way to point out with an emotionally charged, like, only you, like, it really points a finger and singles somebody out. But then what follows is like being famous, which is something that we're all kind of conditioned to believe that celebrities, at the very least, wanted for themselves, right? People are always saying like, hey, you know, you wanted to be famous, not me. I didn't decide to be a celebrity. And I'm not sure if people decide to be celebrities. I think people hear about how much actors or rappers get paid and they decide to be rich. They decide to be successful. And I think that some people actually really do like the fame to the point that like it's possible to be exploited in the industry on the way to being successful. But I think that there's like weird dynamics there and there's nuance. And so for Kendrick to say Only You Like Being Famous, it's probably not accurate on the level that he's actually speaking. Like, he probably knows more people who like being famous. Because if we listen to Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe again, that's kind of half what the song is about. All the people that like being famous. And he talks about them as a big circle. So the way we have to read this is either Kendrick is being like a double talker here. He's deliberately trying to bait Drake into saying like, what are you talking about? I listen to BDKMV. You've talked about other people than me. You know, to kind of just toy with him a little bit by saying, hey man, I can lie on a record too. I can double talk because you're a liar. So sometimes in this song, I'm going to double talk and it's going to be something you're just going to have to deal with. Or it's possible that this is one of those extensions of the Untitled Unmastered 2 move of the You Were Never the Homie, really. Of like, hey, in BDKMV, I'm talking about all these different people. But now he's saying only you like being famous. So if Drake had ever any thoughts maybe about BDKMV or similar songs where he's talking about multiple rappers who are making sacrifices for the fame, maybe this is his clue when he says the you so hard. Hey Drake, when you're looking back at that song, it's just you. It's not you and other people. You were never the homie. It was always a group of us, and some of us were pretending to be in your group. So I could talk about groups, but it's just you. Now, I obviously don't think that it's just you. I think that that's a taunt from Kendrick, because obviously there's other people that have been on stage with Drake in the intervening weeks and months and stuff. Like, in real life, obviously Drake is not all alone. But part of the point of this beef is that Drake has been trying to win, like, an alternate reality information war of, like, deception and manipulation and subterfuge and spying, and also using the internet, like, as a gossip rag to kind of air out some weird messy tea that's not actually fact checked. And I think Kendrick is just saying here, two can play at that game. Anyways, Yachty can't give you no swag. I don't give about who you hang with. And he also talks about, I like to buy yachts when I get the fever in 616 in LA. That's where a lot of people think that he's speaking from Drake's perspective, right? Buying yachts or giving Yachty money to kind of inherit some of that Lil Yachty charm and vibe on his tracks, which is smart. If you can do a track with Lil Yachty, you probably should give it a shot. That dude has phenomenal songwriting instincts. And so for him to say he can't give you no swag neither, I don't give a about who you hang with. He's saying the way that you are, Drake, and this is where he goes into this. This is where he goes into that second list of hates. Because remember, back in verse 1 at the end, he does a hate the way that you walk. For a lot of people, the way that this song is so long and the words come so fast, it can be a fourth or fifth listen to the song before you realize that he lists hates 2 times. But that's how serious he is about doubling down in the song. He comes back into a double down of hatred. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. Surprised you wanted that feature request. You know that we got some to address. I'm not sure exactly which feature request they're talking about, right? Do you reach out for a feature before like that? That seems like what's happening. Something semi-contemporary. Yeah, it feels like I know they have some stuff to address. I think it is they both did have some little clash in the last year, it sounds like, but it sounds like it was bubbling before that. And one of the questions that I posed in the last episode that I don't know the answer to is like, to what extent was the beef game planned out by who? Like, did they both happen to collide? Did Kendrick game plan Drake into a beef? Did Drake bait or game plan Kendrick into a beef? It's one of those things. Anyways, he hates when Drake says the N-word, but that's just me, I guess. Some shit just cringeworthy. It ain't even gotta be deep, I guess. I personally think these are important and interesting lines. I actually have like a very interesting feeling when I hear these lines. Because all the time on my TikTok account, I have people telling me it's not that deep. It's not that deep. And I get so annoyed by it. Because in my mind, it's more fun when we can figure out ways to make it that deep, even if it's just like a mental toy. Even if we're just stretching out what words mean. Remember that old silly puzzle game that's like, you're in a room with no doors and no windows. All you have is a flashlight with no batteries and a board. And like at some point the solution is something like, turn on the flashlight, remember what you saw. Take the saw and cut a hole in the board. And it requires the mind to be very elasticy and like let a saw be 2 things, like a Looney Tune morphing. And to let a hole in a board somehow be a hole out of the room, which is like another morph of like conceptual stuff. That's a fun thing to do. And when people don't like that process for what it is, they go like, it's not that deep. And the point is not whether it is that deep, although it usually sometimes has at least one little surface layer that it is. The point is that the reach itself feels good and often healthy to do. To just like kind of get in there and see how it feels. So as a content creator, I personally don't like hearing it's not that deep. And when he says some stuff's just cringeworthy, it ain't even gotta be deep, I guess. Think about his voice. He says, it ain't even gotta be deep, I guess. There's like a little fall off at the end. Everybody knows exactly the vocal inflections in this song. Because the song is so popular. And people have sung it to themselves so many times. You can hear it in your own head, right? Some shit just cringeworthy. It ain't even gotta be deep, I guess. And there's a sarcasm in it, in my opinion. I think he's saying, hey man, it sounds like, according to the fan base that you brought into this rap beef, we don't even have fans that listen to these friggin' lyrics anymore. I guess it's okay for me to land a shot just saying that we don't like to hear you say the N-word. It's not normally what I would do. But I suppose it's not that deep. I suppose I can just hit you with that now. This is him, I think, expressing a deep frustration that this would even work. That this kind of optics even works. That he can say he hates when Drake says the N-word, but that's just me, I guess. He knows how that works. He knows that baits a whole chunk of the internet that's going to take the wrong conclusion from, like, he knows that people are going to think that They Not Like Us is trying to bar white people from hip hop. Even though he wrote on Fuck Yo Ethnicity exactly the opposite about his intentions for hip hop. That's like, high power is not about black people liking hip hop at the expense of white people. That's not what that movement was ever about. It's not what Kendrick's about. But he does this head fake to the fan base, right? But that's just me, I guess. So he gets the cortisol spiked with saying the word N-word, but that's just me, I guess. That's the Reddit. Does anybody else? That's how Reddit works. Does anybody else hate when Drake says the N-word? Or is it just me? And then you get like 10,000 people. I also hate it. You're not alone. And now we're underdogs, by the way, because you felt alone. It doesn't matter how many of us show up. You felt alone at the start of this, and now no matter how many of us there are, we're all underdogs together. And that's what he did with the community. He really did manage. Like, so Drake stans are upset right now with how the community has been manipulated by Kendrick Lamar, and they think that the fact that he manipulated the community better than Drake did means that Kendrick hit his partner, which is weird. That you can acknowledge the manipulation that Kendrick does, but you can't listen to what came out of Drake's mouth that's not been corroborated by anybody. I feel like both people can be manipulative, but there's also distinct differences in how they manipulate and why. And here, he knows that he's going to culminate on why it's bad when he says the word N. It's because he's alleging in Meet the Grams and Not Like Us that he is literally behaving allegedly in the manner of a slave trader. Because if there's a ring where people are tender groomed, allegedly, and passed around or handed off or sold for dowry or married off or whatever you want to call it, then the guy saying, you're always rapping like you're trying to get some slaves freed, you sound like you might be involved in an adjacent trade if the stuff that he's talking about on Meet the Grams ends up being true. And that's the reason that you wouldn't want Candy on Django Unchained to say the N-word, right? It's not just a racial thing. You don't want to hear Steven on Django say the N-word. And Steven's way darker than Drake and Kendrick. That's Samuel L. Jackson. But you don't like the way that he says it when he's in Django because of his position relative to black people who are being subjugated. And part of Kendrick's core argument against Drake, and I'll remind people, he wrote Euphoria in the same fugue that he was in when he wrote the other songs in this sequence that culminated in Not Like Us. And the last verse on Not Like Us brings it back to, once upon a time, all of us was in chains. That could have multiple meanings. That's obviously about the chattel slave trade on the surface. But what if there's a ritual where in order to be involved in this like industry insider A-list of rappers, there's like diamond jewelry exchanged, maybe some chains. Like we all are in chains because of the industry maybe buying us off with jewelry. I don't know. Or it could just be that the industry themselves, they have chains. Or it could be that the chains refer to like chain gangs that sing together, right? While they're all working on the line for the bosses. He could be saying that like hip hop was full of people who were under the industry's control, but still singing our songs among and with each other. We had collective solidarity as workers. All of us as black people recognized we were wearing the same chains. But then Drake wants to double down and say, you're trying to get the slaves freed. The thing that annoys people about that construction is that Drake is taking himself out of the slaves. But he's a worker under the record labels. Like, he's a black man. Kendrick's not saying that Drake's not black. He's not saying that he hates when Drake says the N-word because of his proximity to blackness. It's because of Drake's proximity to harmful, toxic whiteness in terms of a studio machine that robs artists of their full worth and allegedly behind the scenes is involved in some really bad behavior, which probably would predate Drake, right? Nobody's saying that Drake started anything. He seems more to me like somebody who might have been like a willing co-conspirator in any sort of alleged impropriety. But I think Kendrick's saying here that like, yo man, we have the same bosses. Why are you being the Steven right now? And if that's the reason behind it, right, then it is deeper. It's deeper than cringeworthy. And the irony of that line is that it's extremely deep, that it runs as a deep thread of malice. He's literally saying like that saying the word N is really bad and not cringeworthy on a shallow level, but because he could be trading in black women that he hates, that he calls tender on Meet the Grams allegedly, right? So like, I just think it's one of those passive-aggressive moves that he does in this song that really shines and stands out for me. And I don't think I even talked about that on that level before on the podcast, so I wanted to make sure I got that in there. Still love when you see success. Everything with me is blessed. There's more of that fun little double talk, right? Keep making me dance, waving my hand, and it won't be no threats. You know what I just remembered on the song MFTR by Pusha T? Creep up on these, speak up on it. Walk up in that and wave at everything. Walk up in that and wave at everything. I think you have the image of somebody waving a weapon in the song "More Famous Than Rich" or MFTR by Pusha T. But in this, waving my hand, you're thinking about like doing a little dance, right? Because he says, "Keep making me dance, waving my hand, and it won't be no threat." But I think that the waving hand itself is maybe its own symbol of something. Kendrick also talks about waving a hand out the window and that being a problem for him at a point in his past in the streets of Compton. So waving the hand is significant there. It's something to look for across Kendrick's career. So is like, it's the same as like if you give me Pac's ring back, I might give you a little respect, right? I think that was like the equivalent kind of line he said around here in the show, and we talked about that in part one of this two-parter podcast. Double episode spectacular as we catch up. But here, making me dance, waving my hand, and won't be no threat is a falsehood. It's a lie. Because he's already written all the other stuff that he wants to say. And when he writes this, he's trying to get Drake to do a response. Like, the whole point of a beef is to promise your fans that more is coming, to tell your opponent that more is coming, and to make your opponent feel like they should probably say something back to you anyway. Like, you have to go to response. And if you're in a position that Kendrick's in, and you've got Not Like Us a few songs out, this is a tightrope to walk. Of like poking at him and saying like, hey, there's a way out of this. We can be peacemakers. That's got to enrage somebody like Drake, who loves to hold the corner on us, appearing like the nonviolent peacemaker. He loves to look like the guy that's just hated because he's famous. I'm just a kid that made it, man. I'm just one of the greatest actors of our generation, but I'm totally earnest in my role right now as a gangbanging rapper who also gives big bricks of cash to my community to help heal the victims of gang violence. I'm sort of a Robin Hood in that way, and also sort of a priest. I don't know. That is cringeworthy to me. I don't know. What does he say here? I'm knowing they call you the boy, but where is a man? Because I ain't seen him yet. Right? This is where we get into him just reminding people that Drake is the boy. And I think that's just helpful because if there's any doubt earlier in other songs where when he's talking about being a man and not a boy, you can now point ahead in his career as like a flash forward to Euphoria and then go back to that song and go, yep, it is possible that when he's talking about, disrespecting people who are boys and not men in this game, that maybe there's just one, like that he's the boy. If Kendrick's the biggest hater, then Drake could be the boy that reduces all the other rhetorical boys that Kendrick throws any shots at in his career to him. That's why that line could maybe be here. And also, obviously it's what Drake calls himself. It's just one of those things that you can transition boys to men. Here's the other thing, though. Here's where those B's come back, right? We had all those shoes, BBBs, when we actually got into like the beat proper. And now in verse 2, we return to, excuse me. Matter of fact, I ain't even bleed him yet. Can I bleed him bet? So there's the first like real double B or really tripled B that happens. We have 3 B's here. And then he says, when I see you stand by Sexy Red, I believe you see 2 bad bitches. We've been over that line and over that line. She's 26 years old. She's pregnant. The average age would be 2 13-year-olds. If somebody's really weird and gross, then you could believe that they would see that as 2 quote-unquote bad bitches. But I think most people's stomach would curl at that. And that's why this is such a hard bar. That's why this is the bar that happens right after Kendrick says, can I bleed him? This is like kind of the core to the thesis that we come back to. Say Drake and Not Like Us. It's core to what we talk about in Meet the Grams when he says, hey, Sandra, this part's tough. Why don't you sit down when you're listening to this part? Because what he's saying here is really gross when you analyze it. To analyze it, you have to look up Sexy Red's age and, to see that she is 26 years old, that she is pregnant. It just so happens that 26 is how many letters are in the alphabet. So if you split that up, you get 2 13s. If you capitalize the B's in bad bitches, each of the B's happens to look like, if that's just a fun little thing with words and letters, that might just be totally coincidental. Right here, I believe you don't like women. It's real competition, right? People who confuse themselves with real women, right? Where was that at? We hate the B's you have because they confuse themselves with real women. And notice I said we. It's not just me. I'm with the culture feeling. One thing there, too, is that this could be other people on Drake's team. That this could just be vanilla homophobia in part 1. I forgot to come back for that. I'm not trying to endorse any homophobia. I'm just trying to point it out if he's using B as an allegory to talk about a man on Drake's team who, like, because he says that being a beard just fit him better, which means that he could be the cover for somebody else who's secretly not straight, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is basically that this could be referring to like people on Drake's team or on his side deciding to be Drake's B as a show of like fealty or friendship, and that could be like making the culture feel bad. But I think it's actually much more likely, once again, that we're just specifically talking about drilling down more and more on this allegation about people who are 16, that the culture feels like that's not old enough. And so right here, like, I believe you don't like women, it's real competition. You might pop with them is a really funny line, because after BiiiBLE Drizzy comes out, you're thinking about a bubble butt. You're thinking about a pop ass differently. Pop ass no longer seems like it's talking about twerking all by itself. It could also be like popping a balloon. That's like the fake bubble butt, right? And then, of course, I believe you don't like women, it's real competition. I think that's just an indictment of the sort of like pathology of somebody who would be romantically interested in underage people, is that sometimes there are maturity issues or arrested development issues. Sadly, these are issues that are traumatized themselves, child stars sometimes. And one thing I'll never do is pull a Drake, because Drake's like, all this stuff is because you personally got hurt or touched in The Heart Part 6. Drake, being from an industry, like having been a child actor, where that's something that actually happened to a lot of his coworkers probably, with or without him hearing any rumors about it at the time, that to me was like one of the worst lines delivered in the whole beef. Because like the fact that you would try to go, like that's the most crash out spiral way that you can try to level an attack from, is to say, hey man, no, there's a 0% chance I could be projecting any of this as a child actor, but I do think that you were lying 3 times like Peter in the Bible, denying Christ, and that's what you were denying to your mom in terms of when she asked you if you had ever been unsafe in that way, or an adult had ever been unsafe around you in that way. Anyways, that's just one little piece of like a little rabbit hole off. But yeah, he comes back to like that drop and give me 50 thing here with let's speak on percentage. Show me your splits. I'll make sure I double back with you. So the double back with you here is like the start of this sequence where he culminates with like the back to back, which the What's the Dirt guy, I guess, had predicted around the same time that I did. And I think I think he was probably out there first, because he had idly mentioned that he thought even when just Like That was out, he was like, man, if Kendrick gets into a beef with Drake, he'll probably use that Like That. And when he uses that, or sorry, he'll use that back to back moment, and he'll probably do something like that to Drake, and he'll probably refer to it. And sure enough, that is what happened. I think that was one of the more predictable moments in the beef, because like rappers who write like to write 2 songs. That's right. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if I could write 1 song, why can't I write 2 songs? Heck yeah. But yeah, show me your splits. I'll make sure I double back with you. I think is also just a really clever line according to like my fan theory about Kendrick living a double life from 2011 to present. Financial splits, Drake. Show me what your splits are, because you're so worried about somebody taking half. But then I'll take you back through my whole career. I will double back with you through my whole career, and then you can see all of the different ways that I had to split my attention, split my energy, split my pen hand to write about you, Drake. I'll double back with you. I will take a walk down memory lane with you from 2011 to present, and you'll see just how split a Gemini can get when it's time for his twin to tell stories about you under the surface. And then, of course, this is like the sign chain, right? Signed to Young Money, under Cash Money, which is under Universal, right? Said he was signed to that, right? Which, like, and that could also be like the big head cheese that he's trying to point at. Because he does remember in Not Like Us, he says the industry can hate me, F 'em all and they mama. There's a lot of animosity up the chain at UMG from Kendrick. When I talk about whether the industry is being indicted, it's not me necessarily saying, I think in this line he's talking about Drake in the industry specifically. I'm just referring to specific lines he said in the beef where he's like, no, I don't like the industry either. You guys are getting cooked. The carcass is getting picked apart. You and your moms can be treated in the same way as far as Kendrick is concerned. So he's really, there's a lot of animosity, I think, at UMG kind of boiled up in this. This is a fun little bit of tea if it was true, right? It's try cease and desist on the Like That record. It's a pure allegation. You know, he's saying, did you do this? He's not saying he did. He's showing what master manipulation actually is. Like, I want to talk about another master manipulation thing too. Talking to my mom about the things that he alleged about Drake on Meet the Grams, my mom, who has been a communications professional for her entire adult life, said very quickly, she was like trying to latch on and think about it like a crisis manager, and she was like, wait, did he actually say that Drake did this stuff? And I said, well, no. He said he heard about it happening in the industry, and he said specifically that he thinks that Drake's a bad person who should deserve to unalive. And I think he also said that he and people like Weinstein should be punished in prison for things they did. But he was never clear in saying, you specifically did these things. And then on Not Like Us, I'm continuing to explain to my mom, he only said, I hear that you like him young, and you better not go to cell block 1. Because, of course, when a rumor like that gets around, it is damaging to your safety, whether you did something or not. And the point that my mom kind of wryly made back is like, man, oh man, if Drake didn't do anything at all, Kendrick has actually used all of the tools that Drake would use as like a media manipulator to like really dial it up to 11 and throw it right back at Drake. But the other thing I don't think that Kendrick would do is like stake his own truth-telling reputation on a histrionic emotional performance in Meet the Grams that did not come from a real truthful place. So I'm just staking my own fandom in Kendrick Lamar on that personal bet. That's what I'm doing with this little fan theory. You don't have to. It's just what I choose to do. Because yeah, cease and desist on the Like That record? What? You don't like that record? None of that has to be true. This is like how Trump would write a tweet, right? He could say, what's wrong? Why'd Chuck Schumer scrap the plans that he had for opening up the FEMA camps? Did he not think that they were going to be locking up real patriots fast enough? Did he start writing on new plans for the new FEMA camps? And then people will be like, that is true. Nobody's told me about those FEMA camp plans before, but if he scrapped some plans, it's possible because he's trying to make them even worse. And then like people are like, hey, Chuck, what are you? It was just from whole cloth, right? I don't think there's any verification that the cease and desist was tried. There's certain stuff that's just not verified. You just have to trust somebody. The whole point of this rap beef was that you just have to trust somebody. If you want to call a winner, if you don't want to pretend that it's not bigger than rap, or stop, you know what I mean? If you want to accept that it is bigger than rap, you got to call a winner. Otherwise, you have to pretend that it's just rap. But I don't think it is, because Drake said that he's beating on his fiance or girlfriend. I don't know they're not technically married, right? But Drake's saying he's laying hands, and Kendrick's saying that Drake's laying a different kind of hands. And either way, that's about more than rap. That's important. That's the thing that had Christian Divine start off on his Joker arc, right? Christian's been doing a great Heath Ledger Joker arc because of the way that fan bases of these rap stuff can get. I've actually developed a habit of not really looking down into the comment section when I'm really going. Not the TikTok one. The YouTube one's chill. I can't always trust a TikTok comment section, though. And that should make TikTokers feel away. Because the YouTube comment section used to be the worst spot. But there's some people, man, I'll tell you. Some people will show up in the TikTok live comment section. They just try to slow you down. I don't know if they've been here today. I've been getting better and better at just like working on my gas pedal. Yeah, I've been working on some Trump stuff. I got to Alex, if you wanted to hear about it, Alex Jones, I got $500 million left. Is there a way I could get 19 extra large pepperoni and sausage? Here's the thing. By the time you get here, I might only have $100 million left. So what's the situation on the 30-minute guarantee? Is that Patriot minutes or is that godless frog minutes? That's Alex Jones. That's Alex Jones ordering a pizza so that he can try to like financially get out of paying the victims of Sandy Hook's families the full amount that he owes them. He's trying to binge eat with what he has left. And that's not to actually like attack his weight. It's just him kind of giving himself a last meal as he faces his own choices over years and years. Alex Jones could have been Richard Linklater's speech guy. He could have been the guy in every Richard Linklater movie that just did cool, empowering speeches. I fire people up. I think about what's happening. There is no room for regret. We must move forward into the great dawn together, and we can do it as a creative species. We are humans. We have beating hearts in our chests. We must feel the beating of the hearts together, and we can join together. That's what he was basically doing in fucking Waking Life. It was cool. It was cool. And then he made it not cool. He like went in a really bad place with it. He fucked up his... Look, Rudy Giuliani had 9/11 as a wind at his back, and now people feel the way that they feel about him now. There are some people in this world that, like, their own personal inclination in politics prohibits them from being in contact with the best things in life that they want themselves for very long. Like, they find a way to play themselves into an awful state. I think that's Drake, actually. Like, I think that Drake is in that same energy. Because he had Degrassi, and then he had a career where he got to pretend to be like tough and affiliated with the toughest people, but also the sexiest guy, but also the richest guy with the most #1 records. How is he where he is right now? Like, how did he allow Kendrick to do this to him? It has to have been something about him too. He has to have that Alex Jones or Rudy Giuliani thing of just pushing at it and pushing at it. Because I don't know if he's got a lot of feeling if he's not pushing at it. I think what Kendrick says about Drake is true. When I listened to these songs, I was like, either Drake is true about Kendrick or Kendrick is true about Drake. Someone's losing fans this month. Someone's losing fans all summer long. I'm deciding Kendrick's not losing this fan. Now we're on a podcast. We're having a good time. Hello, Papa John. Yes. I heard it. There was a special off-menu item. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name it on an unsecured line. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. People used to need to give Nick Mullen $5 a month to hear a joke like that. He's not even half black. All right, so where were we? Well, he said back to back, I like that record. I'm going to get back to that for the record. Here's my favorite part about this. If you actually think PG Lang stands for programming language, back to back, I like that record. The word that now equals back to back. He just did an equal statement. He just set a variable. That equals back to back. Back to back, I like that record. I'm going to get back to that. Back to back doubled the first thing, right? So back to back is where we get to 2. I'm going to get back to that. That equals back to back. I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to get back to back to back. I'm going to return to this thing. That means we're going to have 4. And then he gave him 4. I'm going to get back to that for the record. It's a mirror joke. It's a mirror joke in there. It's another mirror joke in there. Why would I call around trying to get dirt on fellas? Y'all think my life is rap? How many times do people talk about a mummy? A lot. People talk about mummies a lot. Y'all think my life is rap and dirt on ends when we know that people talk about mummies a lot? I think that's secret mummy talk. I think the dirt is real. I think he's saying, hey, Drake, you actually do make phone calls that get people put under dirt. Because you represent the mummy. But you think my life is rap? I don't know what the mummy means, but he might be doing like a really stretchy way to refer to the mom or the mom's house. I'm not sure if the mother in this story is necessarily like always a good reference. Because I think sometimes stuff happens at the mama's house. Anyways, y'all think my life is rap could also be about my life is wrapped. Like it's a rap, like my life is a movie and it's time to wrap the movie. And so it's like one of those things like I wouldn't go around trying to get dirt. I wouldn't try to get you dead. I wouldn't try to bury you. My life's not over. If you're trying to do revenge, dig 2 graves. Why am I trying to get dirt on you? I'm not trying to get dirt on myself. My life's not over. So I don't think he's just saying my life is rap, like rap. I think he's playing with wrapped. And another reason for this would be trying to get dirt. Y'all think my life is rap. Where was it? There was like, I don't know. I had a thought about it. I think it might be a callback to something else. But anyways, we got more to talk about. This is the fun part. Yeah. So that's H word, S word. I got a son to raise, but I can see you don't know nothing about that. We talked before about son to raise. being in that like horoscopic sense. If there's a new day coming, if a dawn is rising, that could be the sun to raise. And nothing about dot is not just like that, but also dot. Here's the other thing that I haven't brought up, because like sometimes here's one of my things that actually helps me out as a biracial person. You go through this stuff called like biracial identity development. It's just part of your life, because you're not like always automatically accepted as a black person, and you're never automatically accepted as a white person. And so those kind of different gravities that kind of oppose and play around with where you want to set yourself at, they kind of mess you up in your life. Anyways, one way that I don't feel messed up in my life in pertaining to like, am I white or black, is because I've taken my blackness so for granted. I thought everybody already knew this, but if you have like a black dad and you're trying to talk about anything in your life, and then you try to talk about anything that was happening when they were also alive, you will find out that you don't know nothing about that. That's a black dad thing. So I want to just point that out for anybody that doesn't have a black dad out there, that Kendrick is definitely trying to be Drake's black father in this moment. He's giving him a whole list of things. And the reason I didn't even point this out is I was just like, yeah, you know how dad talks to the kid. It wasn't even a thing to vocalize, because it's how my dad would always talk to me. Would he be like, what you listening to over there? I was like, oh, it's just Animaniacs. It's like, that's not Animaniacs. That's an Earth, Wind, and Fire song. You don't know nothing about that. You don't know nothing about that. He just always. You don't know nothing about Earth, Wind, and Fire. You don't know nothing about that. Miles Davis? What are you talking about, Miles Davis? You don't know nothing about that. Anytime I bring something up, and it's always the same smile on his face. It's the smile of like, you don't know. It's like, he's like, I still got it. I still got a little juice left in the tank. There's still something I can teach about. My dad took me to the Virgin record store back when there were Virgin record stores. And he got me Kind of Blue, and he got me Gratitude by Earth, Wind, and Fire, and a couple of other CDs that I really thought were so fucking important for me to buy that were not as important as the ones that he made me buy that day. Because I didn't know nothing about that. But then I learned stuff about that. I think that intergenerational knowledge sharing is one of those things that power doesn't want us to do. It's like the spirit bomb. Like the spirit bomb is when a parent talks to a kid and the kid listens to a parent. Or when a nephew talks to the uncle and the uncle also listens to the nephew. KRS-One was talking about that shit too. That like, we get more powerful when we learn the ways of people who are different ages than us, and when we can look past those like generational stereotypes. And as soon as the latchkey Gen Xers manage to get out of the house and meet somebody new, we can get started with that healing process. I'm just fucking around. Having a bit of fun. Yeah, definitely. It could be nothing about dad as well, not just dot or that. But yeah, all these things that like he's kind of taunting, not because Drake's not in his son's life, but because Drake doesn't have these things in Drake's life. Waking him up, Drake can't do that because Drake's not woke. He's fast asleep. He's sleepwalking through his life. In Meet the Grams, he talks about drug problems. He talks about partying. Drake sleeps through the day and he parties all night. He's a nocturnal creature. He doesn't know about waking somebody up in the morning. That's when he's going to sleep. Telling him to pray, the sixth god is a habitual lying nun. He's a false preacher. He's a Joel Osteen character. We're not even there, but we'll get there in a second. Drake is a false preacher. He doesn't know anything about how to pray because he's not really connecting with God when he prays. He prays for the crowd and for the church and not for his own soul. Giving him tools to walk through life day by day. He's saying Drake doesn't know anything about how to teach a kid how to walk through life with tools, because Drake doesn't walk through his life with tools. He sleepwalks through it. He glides through it, or he, V12s through it, or whatever. Teaching him morals, integrity, discipline. Listen, man, you don't know nothing about that. This is like, in case you hadn't really figured out what he's talking about. He's like, yo, these are the things you don't know them, so you can't teach them. It's not about you don't know about teaching a son these things. It's that you don't know them, so it doesn't matter how long you're hanging out with him every day. It doesn't matter how many times you're in the Instagram pictures with him now that it's advantageous for the world to see you as a good father. Now that the shoe deals are inked and you have an image to protect, but you missed out for that first year talking about the happy birth of your son at a time when celebrities were always talking about their kids being born when it happened. It was always an exciting time. Easy media pop. Holding it off for the sake of an Adidas deal is probably the worst mistake that Drake made in his life, and that would make that calculation. That's the kind of behavior that the Alex Joneses and Rudy Giulianis of the world do. That's the kind of pushing it behavior I'm talking about. To where Kendrick says, I heard you had another kid. And people go, I mean, I believe it. He's the kind of guy that would lie to us about the first kid he had. Meet the Grams is a real eye-opener to somebody like Drake when fans hear maybe lies told about you on that song and still believe them. Because what does he say? Why believe you? You never gave us nothing to believe in. Teaching him morals, integrity, discipline. Listen, man, you don't know nothing about that. Speaking the truth and consider what God's considering. He's saying, I think he's taunting him here. He's like, you had no idea what was on my mind, buddy. You don't know what God's considering. I think he's saying I could be God right now on you. You wouldn't know. Speaking the truth, you don't know that either, liar. I love this line. Ain't 20v1, it's 1v20 if I gotta smack ends that right with you, because Drake is very good at framing things in his own underground terms, even though he's got a lot of money. His fan base goes, everybody hates on him. Well, why? Because he's so objectively successful. I thought you said everybody hated him. I'm sorry. My kid said something like, I don't care if the world hates it. I'm going to be globally popular. She didn't say exactly those words, but I'm making a t-shirt. I got the words exactly right. It's a very funny t-shirt. But that's I think what Drake does sometimes, is he sits on top of his pile of money and streams that he insists are from real human beings, and he says, nobody loves me. Aside from these millions and millions of people that I use to gloat over how good of a rapper I am because of how popular I am, when we're trying to talk about who's the better writer, I want to talk about how popular I am. When we want to talk about who deserves love as a good person, I want to talk about how nobody loves me. Like, it ain't 20v1, it's a 1v20 if I got to smack people that right with you. That's just a hard bar. Also, 5% stuff, right? 5% will understand, 95 is lost, 5% is the ratio of 1 out of 20. And also, while we're playing with 20s and 1s, 20 plus 1 is obviously 21, 21 Savage in Drake's corner. Kendrick sings about I, and he also sings about you on To Pimp a Butterfly. You is the 21st letter of the alphabet. Bring him out too, I'll clean him out too. Tell Beam that he better stay right with you. Beam could also be about beam like a scale. If you're weighing rocks of a drug of some sort, you know, if you're in that kind of like illegal substance business, which this account does not endorse, in any jurisdiction where it is not currently Portugal or that type of legalization situation. I will also say that I do think that mass legalization of substances is probably the best policy, just based on the science that we have. Not just decriminalization, but just legalize everything, and then provide ways for people to like handle addiction and give people free, paraphernalia so that it's not going to hurt their bodies. All the science indicates this. If it's legal in your jurisdiction, I'm never going to tell you to break the law, but I don't think it's necessarily ever illegal to talk about where the science is. The science is that Portugal model is the correct model. You just turn all the switches to on, and you don't use the police state to punish people for emotional issues, because that's what substance stuff is coming from. It's like emotions that can't be fully felt. And so the emotions aren't going away. If you put somebody in jail and take them away from the substances, they're just going to develop different neurosis and problems. It just creates separation. Integrate people into their communities, support them through their tough times, and you're going to find that the community overall has a better time. Really simple shit. So yeah, it could be a triple beam scale kind of thing, right? It could be a laser. It's obviously also Drake's associate named Beam. Am I battling Ghost or AI? I see dead people. And also, of course, Drake using AI, but also Drake Duppy Freestyle, another ghost. And also, he's saying slow and not like us. And he talks other times about how, like, I got him by a landslide, just look at they laces. And that's all the way back to Element, I believe, right? Got him by he says, game's tied up, just look at they laces. Got him by a landslide, we talking about races, I think. I think that there's something in there about laces that seems to remind me that, like, there's that rumor that Drake can't tie his shoes. So then that would also imply like an artificial intelligence. Like you're talking about racing my mind, Drake. But every time I look at your shoelaces, I'm like, maybe that intelligence of yours is artificial. Once again, that's a form of ableism, by the way. Plenty of autistic people are plenty clever, but they just don't have the fine motor coordination to do certain stuff. Not saying that Drake's autistic. I'm just telling you that an autistic person's going to get their feelings hurt if you say that Drake is slow because he can't tie his shoes. Fella feeling like Joel Osteen. He says it like Joel Osteen, but he also says it like Haley Joel Osment because he's battling Ghost or AI. And obviously Haley Joel Osment was in the movie called AI. He was also in The Sixth Sense. And Joel Osteen is a fake preacher, right? So seeing calling out the name Joel Osteen when you mean to talk about Haley Joel Osment is funny because the name is familiar. It's similar, Osteen and Osment. Haley Joel, the middle name matches the first name. It's the kind of mistake that an AI would make, maybe, if it was close enough. The kind of like hallucinated result you get from a chat GPT. The kind of bad answer new Google might give you. It's also kind of like what looks like a deep fake, right? You could put one face over the other because their faces kind of resemble each other. The reason that I was talking about Beauty and the Beast in the last episode is because I think it was Brad actually that pointed out that The Sixth Sense, AI, had an ARG. It was a big Stanley Kubrick film that Steven Spielberg ended up co-directing and finishing up after Kubrick died during the final process of the film. But AI was promoted by an ARG game called The Beast. And so if the fairy tale that he's talking about in this song is Beauty and the Beast, and he says, funny, he was in a film called AI, the way that it sounds like a non sequitur could literally just be him shoehorning in the reference for the AI, like to double down AI, right? This could also point out that he could just be talking about Allen Iverson as well, right? Somebody who doesn't practice, he only cares about the game, but he doesn't actually practice. That could be an indictment. Because notice one of these has dots on it and one of them doesn't. But I think when he says, funny, he was in a film called AI, it might be funny because that ARG for AI was called The Beast. And the studio that did the ARG called The Beast also did another ARG for a game called Halo 2, which was called I Love Bees. With all of the bees that are buzzing in Euphoria, it is funny that a studio that did an ARG called I Love Bees also did a game called The Beast for a film called AI, which Kendrick is calling to in a song called Euphoria, seemingly completely at random, while getting the name wrong. But as we hear in 616 in LA, I discover myself when I fall short. There's things in Euphoria that almost sound like hastily written mistakes to people. They think that Kendrick Lamar had harbored hate against Drake from 2011 to 2024, surgically got Drake involved in what looked like a 2v1 with J. Cole, that ended up just being a 1v1 with Kendrick at a specific time that happened to, by the way, coincide with like a geostorm. So right when people were thinking about the video game I Love Bees as maybe tangentially related to this, there was literally a fucking halo on the planet Earth that weekend. Like the week after this song came out, that weekend there was those big Aurora Borealis things happening all on the northern hemisphere. But the theory is that he waited for this moment, which was horoscopically aligned, celestial light show, at the same time as he was talking about how he's going into the stars and Estelle Cover My Heart. And also, he kind of just miswrote some of these bars. He just forgot about Haley Joel Osment. Oops. That doesn't line up. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that you'd like meticulously be watching this dude and trying to walk him down with a poker face for 13 years, but then get like your movie actor names messed up. And when you hear so many seeming mistakes like that in a song like Euphoria, that also seems surgically designed to make Drake fans think this song's not polished enough to be good. Because there's a certain kind of music fan that thinks that polish is good. The false lack of polish that hides a trap door is very good. And what did Pusha T say again? If you know about the carport, the trapdoor is supposed to be awkward. Anyways, Sixth Sense telling me to off him. I'm all in the coffin. By the way, blick, it is slang for a blick, right? It's a slang for a gun, right? But also, blick is a slang, it could be talking about an art store in Chicago, because Kendrick has family from Chicago, and if you go to Chicago, one of the biggest art stores you see downtown is Blick. There's a few other stores in the city, and Blick sells art supplies. And he could be saying, I'm gonna paint people. I'm gonna use my art, right? The power of art to put people in their box. And that's a double meaning, right? Blick can mean the gun, but it can also mean a paintbrush. And the only reason I'm thinking about art being killer is because he said, what is it, the braids? And that got me thinking about the game Braid. And Braid has the paintings in the background that when you piece them together, the paintings become very interactive. So that raises blick to me to a first-class citizen word, given that in a city that has origin from, like his family origin includes the city Chicago, that a store that I personally happened to see when I was in Chicago was called Blick, and it's about art. And he talks about how he's using, what did he say? I can heal and give you art as Raphael. I'll blick you in the coffin. Anyways, this is a pretty straightforward line. OVH ends as D riders. It's so straightforward, right? It's so straightforward as casual homophobia that if you're looking for a second layer, just make it literal. It adds intrigue if you want. That's the kind of thing that you could actually say in real life about somebody who was really doing it on the DL, and they probably couldn't say anything back to you because it would be protesting too much. If Drake came back and said, "What do you mean you called my own friends in my circle D riders?" You know, that you can't say that. That makes it sound like you're doing something. That's like if I come home and my kid goes, "Don't worry about what happened to the deli turkey or the VCR." I'd be like, first of all, how old are you? We haven't had a VCR since like 2001. Who replaced my 14-year-old with you? Why is this doppelganger in my house? But if I came home, my kid was like, "Yo, nothing happened with the deli turkey and the Blu-ray player," the first thing I go and look at is the Blu-ray player. Anyways, I do think that maybe there's like just literally a layer there. Because he specifically says he's a beard, and he says what does OVO stand for, the other V option, and not like us. That would just be a doubling down on this kind of thing if you want to take it less literally now, but take it more literally in a few weeks when there's more music to think about for longer. I think that's why he might have dropped this here, so you'd come back later and think about it a second time. I love this bar too. Tell them run to America to imitate heritage. They can't imitate this violence. That's quite a move. And then this was him really foreshadowing how the Juneteenth went, right? What I learned is fellas don't like the West Coast, and I'm fine with it. I'll push the line with it, pick somebody off one at a time with it. We can be on the 3-hour time difference. Obviously, this was super cool because he changed it when Drake was in Texas Live. That was like a really kind of standout moment because he also said in like that, "Think I won't drop the location? I still got PTSD." So him actively updating the location of the time difference in real time indicates that the PTSD is still there. Like he's still going, "You think I won't drop?" Like, listen, man, I need people to know that I've still got you actively on my mind and I know where you're at because the things I'm saying about keeping families away from you is not false. I need to know where you are at all times. Or at all times, apologies. Then the Crody sequence. Don't speak on the family. It can get deep in the family. Talk about me and my family. Someone gonna bleed in your family. I'll be a New Ho King eating fried rice with a dip sauce and a blammy. How deep do we want to go in there? First of all, blammy is like its own food thing, right? No, blammy's a gun. That's not a food item. It's just a gun. That's what it sounded like. A dip sauce, and he's sitting in there like, "I'll be at your restaurant, and I'll be armed, and I'll be ready to go. Tell me your cheese, and we can do this right now on the camera." Crody. We've talked about Kodak Black potentially being a way to like translate camera and Crody into two similar words. The one thing I wanted to say here is like, me and my family, someone gonna bleed in your family. Family here is said 4 times. And I think that it's possible that this one here is the one that's meant to stand out. Because notice that like one of them ends in a question mark and the other ones don't. This could be another one of those cases where Kendrick gives you 4 of something and one of them is meant to stand alone. For that reason that we talked about in the last episode, that like if hidden by a mirror version of Drake that's like a lie, then maybe Kendrick is hiding his true self behind the version that we see on the stage. That like it's the smoke and mirrors magic of stardom that allows us to see these facsimiles of Kendrick and Drake before us. But behind the scenes, Kendrick is doing triple duty work. He's telling his own real story, and he's telling Drake's real story, and he's also doing the work of disguising them as the same story. And meanwhile, Drake just has to, take his meds and go to sleep. And I think that's like an indication here of one question out of the 4. I think this is something that you actually notice if you look for it. 4 things where Kendrick has separated 1 from 3, but otherwise they're all 4 identical. Sometimes it's 4 identical lines with just 1 word removed in the first or the 4th line. It's a very striking pattern once you start to notice it, and it even matches where he allegedly drops lines in the Ken and Friends show, as well as other shows that you see him do in the past, where he'll maybe skip the first bar and then do 2, 3, 4, 4. So that kind of catches us up. This is officially a two-parter episode, because if you watch the first 2 hours from earlier and now you're like rounding the corner on the second hour of the second episode in the same day, it feels like the same day now, even if you're in the car running a lot of different errands after this. And yeah, I still got to figure out how to get the audio episodes on RSS later. This is all stuff that people figure out I don't know when they do it. I should probably like talk to somebody who's done a podcast before and figure things out from them. But anyways, F y'all ends. I don't trust y'all ends. I wave y'all finger and thump y'all ends like, There's another one too. It's 3 M's without a fourth one. Field goal. Punt y'all ends. They punk y'all ends. Nobody ever took my food. Whoever that's effing with them, F you ends and F the industry too. He's literally like calling out, if anybody wants to be standing near Drake, it's not going to be a good call for you. I don't care what job you have. I don't care how protected you are. And then if you take it further, if you take it, I'm taking it further, and that's something you don't want to do. And I think this is him saying, I do want to do it. You don't, but I'm ready. And then he does the taunt, right? We don't want to hear you say it anymore. And then he says stop at the end. And these things at the very end of the song are just literally, I think, trying to poke at somebody to force them to react emotionally. Because if I sat down and I wrote 4 songs and I was trying to start some storylines in these songs that were going to culminate in Not Like Us, I'd want to make sure that I calculated every angle and that he was going to come back so that I could then hit him with the 616, the Meet the... Or no, because then he hits him with the 616. That's right. Euphoria, then 616. And then it went Family Matters, and then it was the other back-to-back of Meet the Grams and Not Like Us. So I feel like he hits him with this and then hits with 616 and gets him like prodded about his circle. And then Family Matters is like, thank God Drake got Family Matters out, or else the whole beef would have looked all different. If that Family Matters song was like 30% worse, what Kendrick did to this man would have just looked like child abuse in its own right. It wouldn't have been close enough. I think that's part of the calculation too, legit. Giving Drake enough rope, giving him enough ammo, feeding him enough fake stories. I think that he and Whitney were like actually conspiring with Dave Free to create fake social media narratives together. And I think that he had Whitney specifically like texting back and forth with Drake to create the appearance of spousal unrest and infidelity. Why? We even have models for that. Just shows like House of Cards, right? You think that you're going to get an up on somebody politically because you're going to out them for some infidelity. Meanwhile, they go back home and they report on all infidelity with their loved one, and then they talk about their political opportunity if they can exploit somebody's limited information about their relationship and trust. Let's live interlude goes. I do have to sleep, and before I go to sleep, I'm taking a friggin' night swim because I got to put more pool shock in the pool tonight, and when I do, I can't go in there for 12 hours, and if I'm gonna turn the pool off for the morning, I'd rather be in at night then. But what does he say at the end here? There they are. There you are. The lyrics. Blame it on Mr. OVOXO. And by the way, somebody pointed out, how many stocks do I really got in stock? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5. So you have a 5, but then plus 5 makes it 10. Roman numeral for 5 is V. Roman numeral for 10 is X. So blame it on Mr. OVOXO. The reason why I'm breathing all the vanity I know. How many stocks do I really got in stock? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5. He said that I'm Mr. 1 through 5. That's the only option on element. Blame it on Mr. OVOXO is another double meaning bar. He's found a really slick way to make a plan of how he's going to be the 5 and then become the 10. He associates himself with the number 10 a lot, right? Look up in the sky. 10 is on the way. In the song DNA, he's Mr. 1 through 5. All through Damn, you see him calling himself the 5 and the 10. And so here, it sounds like he's talking about Drake, The Weeknd, that kind of like whole overall umbrella of entertainers. But it's double meaning. The reason why I'm breathing all the vanity I know, the reason why my best friends say she loved me more than life, but I live a double life and need to let her go. So right here, I think that he made Drake think that the best friend is hip-hop, his culture, his origin. But I think he's actually literally talking about Whitney. I think he's saying that we have so much life and love together but also because I got to do this really selfish, I choose me, I'm sorry, this super selfish mirror project telling the story. I can't be with her yet. And I know that eventually Drake's probably going to use our separateness against him too. That's why when we see the crown of thorns on Mr. Morale, I think he's saying, it is finished. You don't have to worry. I'm with my family now. I'm okay. I think that 2 years before this beef started, Kendrick actually finished all the work that he needed to do in the beef, except for like the last songs to write. And I think that he's going to be able to coast for the rest of his career with minimal friction from Drake, because I think he's actually used most of his career to double life game plan for these years of his life. I think that he's been looking ahead, and I don't think it's just him. I think every warrior has been waiting for euphoria. The reason why the highlight was when he said, you belong to the people when you outside. That's just not like us. When he says it's a must we outside, that is the highlight. That's why I keep telling people that in this podcast. I'm telling you it's a must we outside is the first commandment of this podcast because Kendrick's telling you. The reason why the highlight was when he said, he's now in Drake's POV mostly, right? When he said, you belong to the people when you're outside. I'm sure that Drake told Kendrick, hey, when you're out at these shows, when you're out and you're famous, you're not your own man anymore, man. Get ready to be in the box. Get ready for what fame does. What's up, X? Nice to see you. But I think that he's saying here that, like, Drake told me that I was going to lose a lot of agency with fame. But meanwhile, I've been planning a different highlight because I'm in a double life. So I think every line after this is definitely a double meaning, right? The reason why the highlight was when he said, which he. If it's Drake, then you're a famous person and you have to just accept that your life isn't your own because you're famous. If the he is Kendrick, you belong to the people when you're outside is the crescendo of not like us, and that's the highlight of the beef when I finally get to take down this guy that I've been living a double life, right? Something in here somewhere. The reality living in the Matrix felt like the initiation, a reality living in the Matrix. And by the way, they talk casually about the industry and how the women be the taste makers for the shit we making. Taste makers. I'm not going to get weird, but like think about how taste is used in a song like Humble. That taste, the sensory stuff. You usually can't believe your eyes in this code system, but you can believe your nose and you can believe your taste buds and you can believe the feelings that you feel emotionally. Then he says, so dig a shovel full of money, full of power, full of pee, full of fame, and bury yourself alive. Then I died. So right here, I think he could be saying like, hey, Kendrick, your shovel is full of these things and bury yourself alive because I have to live this double life and I'm going to hide underneath the money, the power, the pee, and the fame. Or he could be saying, hey, Drake, get ready. Have fun. This is your last party. I'm with you now. You better enjoy this money and power and pee and fame, and you better bury yourself in it. Because guess what? I, Kendrick Lamar, am about to die. I'm about to go into this double life mode. It's almost like Dr. Manhattan going through the tunnel of love in the Watchmen remake. Because I think when he emerges, it is the outside. And really, in terms of time, all these years pass. But this meeting with Drake happened on June 16th of that year. That's what he's singing about here, and that's why he named 616 in LA, apparently. Part of why he named it that. That's what I learned from that What's the Dirt thing, right? And so if that's the case, then he's going to come back to life the very next day, in a way. If he says, I died at the end of 616, his birthday is 617. I think he's showing you in this song how some of the timing works. AM to the PM, PM to the AM funk. The AM to the PM funk is the sweat that you have from hard work. The PM to the AM funk might be the regret feeling if you're not working all day that plagues you from sundown to sunup. I think that Drake being the king of sundown to sunup and Kendrick being the king of sunup to sundown, Kendrick is the day to Drake's night, is also a theme that happens here. And the idea of him dying on the night of the 16th when we know that his birthday is the 17th, that's interesting to me. Because that feels like it plays into that, like, the next day you're reborn thing. And I've learned things about dates today that I didn't know yesterday, so I wanted to, like, make sure that I got that stuff out. So, anyways, I've just been on live for 90 minutes. I just got my notice to take a break. We've been talking about Kendrick Lamar lyrics as part of my podcast, which is called BiiiBLE Study, because I consider Kendrick's entire career of lyrics to be a Bible into his heart, an authoritative research source to determine what is actually on Kendrick's heart according to his writing. And I'm just trying to do a lot of like deep reads as just a form of fan fiction, autism, hyperfixation exercise, so that I can enjoy rap music that I really love. And something I wanted to experiment tonight was just an all talking podcast where we just talked lyrics and didn't even sit back and listen to music. And my voice is tired as shit, but I'm going to go out, I'm going to hop in the pool for like 15 minutes. It's going to be glorious. I think I made it too warm earlier today and I forgot to turn it back down. So it might be like 89 degrees in the pool in the dark. And for Father's Day, I got these really cheap, shitty, but bone conduction and waterproof headphones. And so I think I'm going to put on like maybe the Gang Goes to the Water Park episode of Always Sunny on Plex and swim a couple mini laps in the little pool and tread some water. And then I'll put the pool shock in. Hey, and then tomorrow we're going to make some more music on this and other devices that are at my fingertips right now at the moment that you can't see. But yeah, thank you very much for hanging with me this evening. If you've been on the Patreon and you're at the $3 tier, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to try to bundle some stuff in tomorrow that I've been working on in the last couple of weeks, but I haven't gotten up into like a bundled, here's some stuff I've been working on in the last couple of weeks post. So that should be coming up tomorrow as like my main thing that I'm pushing up on the $3 Patreon. And the main thing I'm going to be doing live on the $3 Patreon tomorrow is kind of flipping expectations, starting the day with a bonus episode recording. If I have time to do yet another regular episode recording, I'll do that too. But I'm going to try to get up to 2 bonus episodes done between tomorrow and Tuesday, just to be kind of fully caught up on my Patreon cadence before I can move into covering some other songs that I'm interested in doing and finishing up on some other tracks for the Bandcamp. So yeah, I've got some stuff that I'm doing. Thanks for hanging with me and chilling. And yeah, I appreciate being able to share dopamine with you. Thanks so much for supporting the links in my bio. I do have music to sell. I make beats. I do raps. I do parody songs. I do acoustic folk songs. They're very heartfelt, lyrical, layered, and well-written songs. I think you'll enjoy them if you take a listen, and you can do that for free too. Thanks in advance for subscribing to the Patreon. If you subscribe for a year in advance at patreon.com/thirdperson, you do get 2 months of that year for free. The free episodes on Patreon, I'm trying to get back on the cadence of free episodes on Monday, bonus episodes on Thursday. This will be a week of trying to do more episodes in staggered days than I would normally do in a week, so I can then hit a reset and then just do Monday and Thursday episodes again. Anyways, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for loving music. Let's not close with like Drake's face on the screen. You know, the Mirror says everything they say about me is true. That's what the Mirror says. That's why it says it backwards. And I think that Kendrick is the mirror. I think the mirror reflects a true light. I think it's nice to be basking in the light of truth, even if it's in a kayfabe way for an entertainment podcast. It is very nice. It feels good to be a preacher, to embody somebody that has the certainty of faith. That's a useful character to put on and take off. I wouldn't feel comfortable putting on a preacher character that has unnecessary faith at times that I had to be called on to say something that was factually true in a time-sensitive way where actual human life or harm was at stake. I feel like it's fun to be a preacher when it's time to tell stories in general terms to align people in a direction that they already knew they needed to go. When I say stuff at the end of these episodes, like the fact that my altar call is that you have your own creative work that maybe you've let sit by the wayside, and I'm just asking you to consider doing the love act for yourself to like carve out 15 to 30 minutes tomorrow, like not 2 days from now, but like tomorrow, figure out what the time is and at least like touch the guitar or like open the sound program, pick up the canvas, choose a paint color, put a line on there, you know, do the things that you know that you're here to do with the time that you have to the extent that you can make that time. And do what you can to try to minimize the time that you sit there worrying about if it's going to be good enough to be worth the time. Because I think you're worth more than the time that you spend worrying about whether you're good enough. All right, cheers. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for supporting, and I hope you have a great night. Sometimes you hear a mic drop because it was too